Imagine you open your eyes. The air smells of horses, leather, and dust. Thousands of men stand around you in armor, waiting. And you're following the most famous conqueror who ever lived. You're no longer in your own time. The year is 334 before Christ. You're a young soldier in the army of a 22-year-old king named Alexander, soon to be called the Great. Alexander was born in a kingdom called Macedonia, in the north of Greece. His father was a powerful king. His teacher was the famous philosopher Aristotle. Imagine having the smartest mind in the world as your tutor. Aristotle taught young Alexander about science, philosophy, and the stars. But Alexander dreamed of something bigger, conquering the whole world. When his father was killed, Alexander became king at just 20 years old. Many thought a boy could never rule. They were very, very wrong. He gathered his army and crossed the sea into Asia. His goal? To defeat the largest empire on earth, the mighty Persian Empire. Picture the fear in your chest. The Persian army was enormous, sometimes outnumbering yours many times over. But Alexander had something they didn't: a brilliant mind and total fearlessness. He always led from the front, riding his loyal black horse, Bucephalus. A horse so wild that no one else could tame him, except Alexander, when he was just a boy. Battle after battle, Alexander won. At the Battle of Issus, he crushed a Persian army many times larger than his own. The Persian king fled in terror. Imagine marching for years through deserts and mountains, never losing a single major battle. To his soldiers, Alexander seemed almost like a god. On his way, he reached the rich lands of Egypt. And here, the Egyptians didn't fight him. They welcomed him as a liberator, even calling him a pharaoh. Standing on the coast of Egypt, Alexander looked at the sea and had an idea. Here, he said, I will build a great city. He named it after himself, Alexandria. Imagine designing an entire city from nothing. Alexander planned wide streets, grand harbors, and temples. He wanted it to be the greatest city in the world. But Alexander didn't stay to see it finished. The world still called to him. He marched east, farther than any Greek had ever gone, all the way to India. His soldiers crossed rivers full of crocodiles and fought war elephants taller than houses. They were exhausted. They had been away from home for 8 long years. Finally, by a distant river in India, his tired soldiers refused to go on. For the first time, Alexander had to turn back. Even he could not conquer everything. On the long journey home, Alexander suddenly fell ill with a terrible fever. And then, at only 32 years old, the unstoppable conqueror died. Imagine the shock. The man who conquered half the known world, gone so young. His empire was the largest the world had ever seen, and now it had no leader. His generals fought over his lands and split the empire among themselves. One of them, named Ptolemy, took the richest prize of all, Egypt. And the city of Alexandria? It grew exactly as Alexander had dreamed. Within a few generations, it became the brightest center of knowledge on earth. Now imagine walking through Alexandria. Towering over the harbor is a giant lighthouse, the Pharos, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, guiding ships with its fire. But the true treasure of the city wasn't gold. It was knowledge. At its heart stood the most famous building of the ancient world, the Great Library of Alexandria. Imagine a place that tried to collect every book ever written. Not hundreds, not thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of scrolls, gathered from all over the world. Books back then weren't like ours. They were long scrolls of papyrus, rolled up and stored in shelves, each one copied by hand. Each scroll was incredibly precious. The rulers of Egypt were obsessed with collecting them. Every ship that entered the harbor was searched, not for treasure, but for books. If a ship carried a scroll the library didn't have, the originals were kept, copied, and the copy was given back to the owner. The library always kept the real one. Imagine being a scholar there. Thinkers came from every corner of the world to read, study, and argue about science, math, and the mysteries of the universe. In this library worked some of the greatest minds in history. A mathematician named Euclid wrote the rules of geometry, rules still taught in schools today. Another scholar, Eratosthenes, did something incredible. Using only shadows, sticks, and math, he measured the size of the entire planet, and got astonishingly close to the real number. Imagine figuring out how big the Earth is without any modern tools, more than 2,000 years ago. That's the kind of genius the library inspired. Doctors studied the human body. Astronomers mapped the stars. Some even suggested the Earth moved around the sun, almost 1,800 years before most of the world believed it. The library wasn't just shelves of scrolls. It was like the world's first great university, a place where human knowledge was gathered and pushed forward. Imagine all the wisdom of the ancient world, Greek, Egyptian, Babylonian, Indian, collected under one roof. It felt like the memory of all humanity lived there. But here begins the saddest part of our story. Because this treasure of knowledge would not last forever. Over the centuries, Alexandria was caught in wars, riots, and the rise and fall of empires. And a place full of fragile papyrus scrolls is terribly easy to destroy. Many people think the library burned down in one single, dramatic fire. But the truth is more tragic and more complicated than that. One famous event happened when the Roman general Julius Caesar was trapped in the city. During the fighting, he set fire to enemy ships in the harbor. Imagine the flames spreading from the docks into the city. Ancient writers say the fire reached storehouses full of scrolls, and thousands of them turned to ash. But that was likely not the end. The library, or parts of it, seem to have survived in some form for a long time after Caesar. The real story is that the library didn't die in one night. It died slowly, over centuries, from fires, neglect, lost funding, and shifting rulers who no longer cared. Imagine a great fire that doesn't roar all at once, but smolders for hundreds of years. Scroll by scroll, room by room, the world's knowledge quietly faded away. With each loss, ideas vanished forever. Entire books by brilliant ancient thinkers were destroyed, their discoveries gone, never to be read again. We will never know exactly what we lost. Cures, inventions, histories, stories, perhaps ideas that could have changed the world, turned to ash and dust. Some historians believe that if the library had survived, humanity might have advanced by centuries. Whole leaps in science, delayed by 1,000 years or more. Imagine how different our world might be if all that knowledge had been saved. It's one of history's greatest what-ifs. Today, almost nothing of the original library remains. No grand building, no shelves of scrolls. Only its legend and the stories of the geniuses who once worked there. But here's something beautiful. The idea of the library never truly died. The dream of gathering all human knowledge in one place inspired libraries, schools, and universities for thousands of years afterward. Think about it. Every library you've ever visited, every school, is in a way a descendant of that ancient dream born in Alexandria. And today, you carry something the scholars of Alexandria could only dream of, a device in your pocket that holds more knowledge than their entire library ever could. The internet itself is, in a way, the great library of our age. A place where the knowledge of all humanity is gathered, just as Alexandria once tried to do. Now imagine the difference. Their knowledge could burn. Ours can be copied 1,000,000 times, shared across the whole planet in an instant, almost impossible to destroy. But the lesson of Alexandria still warns us. Knowledge is precious, and it can be lost. What one generation forgets, the next may never rediscover. Now you close your eyes. The dust of the battlefield, the smell of the sea, the towering lighthouse, all of it fades away. You return to your own time. But two names stay with you. Alexander, the young king who built a city he never saw rise. And Alexandria, the city that lit the world with knowledge. One conquered with a sword. The other conquered with ideas. And in the end, it was the ideas that lasted longest of all. Alexander wanted to be remembered forever. And he is. But maybe his greatest victory wasn't a battle at all. It was a single city and the library within it. A library that, even in being lost, taught us the most important lesson of all. That knowledge is the greatest treasure humans have ever created. So the next time you open a book, or search for an answer online, remember Alexandria. Remember how rare and fragile knowledge truly is. And remember the young king who dreamed big, the scholars who measured the stars, and the library whose light still reaches us, more than 2,000 years later. Thanks for traveling through time with us. Which moment in history should we explore next? Tell us in the comments.